Hello, this is Stephanie Cunningham, and we have Katie Overcash with us today. And Katie is a licensed mental health clinician and has been working in that area for 10 years. And she's been adding to that yoga, and specifically in the area of trauma. And so we're going to talk to her today about putting those two areas together, and to even and talk a little bit more about how yoga can really help trauma. Welcome, Katie. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so why don't you tell us your story about how you got to this particular point with both your career and with your yoga?
Yeah, so I have been in the mental health field, like you said, for over 10 years, and I started in a private practice for about 7 years, and I've had my own private practice for about 4 years, and really just focusing on talk therapy techniques for all these years. And a few years ago, I was running a self-injury group for adolescent girls, and I had a couple of yoga instructors approach me about, integrating maybe a yoga class with my group. And in talking with them, I started to see these connections. They were talking a lot about mindfulness and the breath work and, noticing sensations in the body. And I was like, all these fireworks and light bulbs went off. And I was like, oh my gosh, this goes together so well. So I had them come in a few times to my group, and the girls seemed to really enjoy it, and it just kind of added something different. And I think for that population, it really it showed them that here's something different you can do with your body instead of using self-injury and hurting your body. So that was good. Yeah, and then I started using these yoga instructors with some of my individual clients, and I noticed that, I was scheduling with my client and scheduling with these yoga instructors, and it was a lot of hassle to get them in.
Yes.
And I started sitting there and I was like, why am I not doing this? Why can't I just go and do yoga teacher training? And that way, if someone's in my office and I see a space for yoga, we can do it. So I went through yoga teacher training and just started using it with some of my clients right away when I had started my training. And the feedback I was getting from the clients that were letting me integrate that with them, some of my clients have been in been in therapy for many, many years, or been in some other very highly revered types of therapy. And the feedback I got was how this is the only thing that they've really ever seen this much progress from, or these many benefits from. And so it just really lit all of these fires in me. And ever since then, I've really just kind of exploded.
That's amazing. I'm really impressed that this adding the yoga makes such a big difference. Not that I'm really surprised,
yeah.
but it's really wonderful. Okay. So had you been doing yoga before, or was this new to you also?
Yeah. Well, so my yoga journey started many years ago with hot power yoga. And I didn't love it, and I still don't love it. So I quit doing yoga altogether because I just didn't like it. And once the ladies were coming in with my self-injury group, I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this another shot. So I started exploring and going to different studios and going to different styles, and I really found non-heated and more of like a vinyasa flow was a good fit for me. And then several months down the road, stumbled across a restorative yoga class. And that is the biggest passion of mine ever, is restorative yoga. For me personally, and, for self-care. And then also restorative yoga is what I have seen is the best style of yoga to integrate with what I'm doing in my office.
Oh, okay. And why do you think that's so? Is it just...
So restorative yoga is really helps people tap into that parasympathetic nervous system, so that rest and digest, very calming part of our nervous system that's not in that fight or flight stress mode, where many of us stay in that stress mode way longer than we need to. So it taps into that. I think that I was doing a program through Judith Hanson Lassiter, an online program that she has, and heard something in there that really resonated with me, that asana is a distraction. So, the more the yoga where we're moving, it's great, and I love it, and I do it myself, and I think it's really great for other people, but it can be a distraction because you're moving from one pose to the other, and you're looking at the instructor, and you're looking at yourself, and you're not really able to tap into that inner landscape. And whereas I think restorative yoga, because you are fully supported by props, the goal is to just let go and relax, that it causes you to go inward and start paying attention and, making informed decisions on how to take care of yourself when you start going inward, or noticing certain sensations that may be able to help us in taking care of ourselves.
Okay. All right. Excellent. I hadn't ever thought of it that way, but in fact, some of my students today were saying we should do restorative, and I go, well, I have to learn how, first of all. But that sounds like a really great benefit. I'm really impressed with that. So you say that obviously when in your mental health clinician work, you are working with people who have different kinds of trauma, but you're now taking that into the yoga work, where you're kind of not maybe focusing on trauma, but adding all of that kind of knowledge also. Is that a fair thing to say? Or?
Yeah. I'm also very passionate about sending or letting people know about using yoga as a complement to any trauma work. And I think as a mental health clinician, we're very careful about referrals, and we want to make sure our clients are protected if we're going to recommend something. And so this other part of me is very passionate about informing or educating the yoga community on creating a safe environment for people to go to who may be working through or healing from trauma.
Okay, explain what you mean by a safe environment.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a lot that I have in mind for that, but really it's about, there's several different things, and whenever I do a training for a teacher training or maybe for a studio, I'm not there to tell you what to do and what not to do. I'm really there to give you the information, and then you can take what resonates with you or what you feel is, you're going to use in your yoga class. But some of the things that I address is, for one, I'm very, very careful in this, is that physical assists. So when I teach a class, I don't put my hands on anybody in my class. I do see the benefit in physical assists, and I do enjoy getting physical assists from time to time. But for me, people who are healing from trauma, it could send them into, some sort of flashback of their traumatic stress. It could also be it could feel very harmful to them in that they are, they have once been hurt by other people touching them. So physical assist is something that I avoid in any type of class that I teach. I also like to have in my classes a lot of suggestive or invitational language. So, for example, I'll invite you to, or when you're ready, those kind of things, so that someone doesn't, I want this to be my students' yoga class, and I want this to be their journey, not me kind of being up there and being a drill sergeant and do this, do that. I want them to make a decision for themselves. So often people who've been through traumatic stress, other people have maybe told them what to do or forced them to do certain things. And so I want them to start to develop that autonomy and listen to their own body. I think that another thing that I try to avoid is not telling anybody in my class what you should be feeling in your body. I say you may feel this in your body. So if you're doing something where, in a normal class, you may say, you'll feel this stretch in your hamstrings. I would say you may feel a sensation in your hamstrings. For these people, they have learned that their body is unsafe, and it's not been a comfortable place to be for many, many years, either because of the traumatic stress or because of the flashbacks or the intrusions that they go through. So they may not feel these sensations in their body. And so when they come to class, I don't want them to feel that they're not successful in this class because they didn't feel this certain stretch in this part of their body that, maybe I told them that they would. And then I think lastly for me is I try to stay away from any type of imagery, guided imagery, things like that, because the goal really is about getting in their body and being, mindful and being in the moment and not sending them off into the woods or, out by a lake. And not that I think that those things are bad, but you never know what's happened to somebody, and something traumatic could have occurred in one of those places. And it may not feel like a safe place for them to go.
Okay. Well, my confusion about trauma is, I think almost any adult would have had trauma in their life. But it sounds to me like you're talking about people with really severe trauma, that they've had trouble really getting over it or integrating it or feeling better afterwards. Is that a fair thing to say, or would you have another definition?
Yeah, no, I think that that's true. I think that one of the stigmas of trauma that we need to take away is that you need to be a military vet to have gone through it, or you need something really, really horrific to have happened. It can be things that, like you said, that most adults have probably gone through. And the research out there, we don't exactly know what would cause somebody who went through a traumatic stress to maybe get the diagnosis or meet the criteria of PTSD or complex PTSD. So, you and I could be going through a traumatic stress at the same time, and I may develop the symptoms or the diagnostic criteria, and you may not. So, yeah, I think that for the people that, and especially the people who have complex PTSD, which is kind of ongoing and repeated traumatic stress. So a lot of times people think of, maybe living in a home as a child where there was a lot of maybe physical abuse or sexual abuse or verbal abuse for many, many years, and several different or multitude of incidents that have occurred. So for those people, when they've gone through traumatic stress for many, many years, it has, and especially in those formative, developmental years, it really has a much more lasting impact on their mind and body. So that's a big part of kind of who I'm talking about when I'm talking about trauma-sensitive yoga. And, being aware, and those are the people that may, have a flashback or dissociate in a class or, anytime really.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, all right. Now I can understand that better, because I thought, well, everybody's got trauma. So, but really it's how the people have perhaps reacted to it, and whether it's been long-term and ongoing that may affect how they're feeling about themselves now. How would I know if I have someone in my class that's suffering from some trauma that I should be particularly careful about?
Well, so the thing that when I teach, yoga instructors or talking with people, is that you never know, right? Unless someone comes up and tells you, you don't know. Yeah. And so you kind of, I think it's a safe way to go in and thinking that there's probably some trauma in this room, and that's how I teach my classes, that most likely there is somebody in here who's gone through traumatic stress. So let me teach my class with that in mind. But, I think that for some people, they may have some sort of reaction in a class. So it may be, you may notice a reaction if you do a physical assist. They may kind of jump, or it may be you can tell it's very uncomfortable for them. You may notice people may have a flashback, or maybe dissociate in class, or maybe have some sort of emotional outlet in your class. So not to say that that's definitely someone who's gone through traumatic stress, but it could be.
Okay. So you're looking for, if that would be one thing that might be causing it if something like this happened in a class. I have had people who get very emotional sometimes, but it's just more like, at least they didn't tell me it was about trauma, so I'm assuming it wasn't, but maybe it was. Okay, I can understand. I think you'd really, as a teacher, have to be really watching the whole time and really being aware of looking for those kinds of things. Would you agree with that, or do you think that's overreacting?
No, and I think that, as a yoga teacher, you start getting your following and have people that, come to your class every single time you teach, or many times that you teach. And so you start to get to know your students, and then you start to get in tune with them, and you may notice something very slight, or you may, if you believe in, energy and things like that, you may notice that their energy shifts during the class. So, I don't think it's that we have to be, staring at our students, but you just may notice some of these things. And I think being able to hold that space in a safe way for them.
Okay. And how does this affect the other students in the class?
It may not. I think with the style of yoga that I teach is restorative. Most people are on their mat, and I mean physically and mentally on their mat. So they're not necessarily disrupted by somebody else. And these people also, that have gone through traumatic stress, they've learned most likely to unless they're dissociating and they're not very aware, but they've learned to maybe regulate themselves in some sort of way. So it may not be that obvious for other people. And I've had people in my class I know that are crying, but I don't think anybody else even was aware that it was going on. So.
Okay. All right. So you say that you've added this to your mental health work, which is very exciting, I'm sure. What do you think has been the biggest change you've seen after adding this in? How has that made a difference?
Well, and I'm big into the mind-body connection, and I think that's where, the research is definitely in that now and heading in our society, and even the medical model is really kind of heading in this whole mind-body connection. So for me, in working with people, and it's not, I don't just work with, the traumatic stress folks with yoga, but also people that, may be struggling with anxiety or depression, anything kind of mood related. But for them, it's, I think it empowers them. It's something so tangible, like I can talk to you in my office for an hour and you may leave and you may feel like a little bit lighter, or you may feel like you've gained some awareness. But if you've practiced some yoga with me, as well as we've talked through some things, you're now leaving with something very tangible. So you've got a tool that you can use anywhere you want, whether it's, some of the breathwork stuff we've done, or for me, the restorative yoga, which I love because you can, just kind of pick a pose, for example, like legs up the wall, and do that at home. If you're feeling, very dysregulated emotionally, put your legs up the wall for 7 minutes and, start to really focus on your breath. And then all of a sudden, you've used a coping skill. But, I think that another part is that it really helps, like I said earlier, kind of people getting back in their body, and really starting to pay attention to that. I think a lot of the mindfulness, stuff talks about people being on autopilot, just kind of going through the day, wake up, go to work, eat dinner, go to bed, whatever, and not really spending any time, paying attention to what's going on the inside. And I think that yoga also can help people get back in their body and, pay attention to what's going on the inside and notice certain sensations that may be warning signs that, hey, you need to, engage in a little more self-care, or maybe you need to slow it down a bit and kind of de-stress before you get to full-blown panic attack.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'm just trying to make sure I understand this, that it's really kind of getting people to think about themselves in a really good way, to have them really be in contact with themselves and to work towards some kind of self-care, so you're giving them tools for that. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and feeling good about their body, whether it's, somebody who, is struggling with anxiety, depression, trauma, any of that stuff, feeling proud and feeling good about their body, because, and going back to some more mindful stuff, your body is like a vehicle. It's your only car you're given. You can't trade it in and get another one. And so taking care of it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Excellent. All right. So when you're talking, I was very interested you were talking about teenage girls who were in your group because of self-harm. This would be an excellent, and you use yoga with them. So is this the kind of thing that you think is really helpful, this kind of situation, or all kinds of situations that you work with?
Yeah, I think that, any of the populations that I've kind of mentioned, this can work very well with, self-injury. I call it the new self-injury because kind of the old way of thinking of self-injury was that it was based on having abuse or trauma in your past, where the self-injury that we've been seeing probably in the last 10 or so years is not necessarily that. It's more of dealing with really intense emotions of adolescence and not necessarily being equipped or being able to manage those really intense emotions. And so a lot of adolescents will use self-injuries out there. I mean, celebrities have talked about it. It's out on social media, things like that. And so they will use it in, to help manage these intense emotions that they're dealing with.
Oh, so, and then I can very easily see where yoga is another tool to help you manage those.
Yeah, let's do this instead of, self-harm.
Cool. All right. You said you have some of your clients who have written something about this amalgamation, shall we say, of these two. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah. So I have one from an adolescent, and she was introduced to some yoga and meditation and things like that in my office, and has taken what she has learned in here and used it at home. So what she provided to me was yoga has had a tremendous effect on my mentality for the better. For me, yoga is like a shower. It washes off all of the dirt I accumulate each day and cleanses my mind and my soul. I would not be as happy and free as I am today without yoga. It has truly made me a better person.
I love that. I love that it's a shower that cleanses off the day. I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah, I love that part too.
You must be very, very happy with that kind of result for somebody to actually write that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and especially an adolescent too. I don't know if I could have written something so beautiful.
I was pretty inarticulate as a teenager.
Yeah. So I have one from an adult too that is also very, very good at how she describes how this has helped her, that I can share if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Okay. So she says, I started doing yoga about 18 months ago when I began working through years of severe childhood sexual abuse with my therapist. She had suggested yoga as a way to help me cope with the symptoms of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. In our very first yoga session, I found almost instant relief from the high anxiety and fear that I had lived in for most of my life. It was like my whole body could finally relax. As our trauma work progressed, so did my yoga practice. One of my primary coping skills in and out of therapy has become restorative yoga. In restorative yoga, I'm able to calm down both my mind and my body. The physical symptoms from complex PTSD for me include stomach aches, joint pain, nausea, and shaking. The psychological symptoms include overwhelming anxiety and fears, intense urges to hurt myself, difficulty concentrating, flashbacks, and dissociation. When I practice restorative yoga, I become aware of what is going on in my body, physically and mentally. I am then able to focus on using my breath to calm myself down and just be present in the moment. For me, this often looks like placing an emphasis on breathing in for 5 counts and out for 7 counts. In doing restorative yoga, I have had these huge moments of healing and relief surrounding my traumatic childhood. For example, a few weeks ago, I was in a restorative yoga class after spending several therapy sessions working through accepting the sexual abuse that I had experienced as a child. During my yoga class, I was in a restorative twist. The teacher recited a quote that talked about how yoga helps us endure the things that we cannot change. In that moment, my entire body felt acceptance for what happened to me. The things that I went through as a child were horrible, but because of yoga, I'm able to endure the symptoms of complex PTSD. Because of yoga, I'm able to work through the trauma and heal. Because of yoga, I can be okay.
I'm trying not to. That's very emotional. That's amazing that yoga could do that, really.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
It is.
You see why I'm so passionate, right? When I read things like that, I hear things. Yeah.
That's just incredible. I'm really happy when my people can do a really good, hip opener. That's just really great. So let's talk just a little bit about restorative yoga. Obviously, you're using that in your with these clients, and so just give me kind of an overview of it. So for people that may not know exactly what restorative yoga is.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Judith Hanson Lasseter. She wrote the book called Relax and Renew. And she's written several other books, trained under BKS Iyengar, so she's, kind of got that lineage. But really, the restorative yoga is using all the props. So we're using bolsters, blankets, blocks, sandbags, eye pillows, all of these different props, and the more the better. But using them to fully support the body. So you will lead, as a teacher, I lead my class through a series of poses, holding them anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, maybe even up to 15 or 20 minutes. And the goal is to release and relax. It's not to, really kind of force yourself or push yourself like a deep stretch class or, something like that. But really just kind of relax the body, find those areas of tension and soften it. The other part that I think that restorative yoga at least has helped me with is being able to sit through things that come up. So when we start to still the body, we start to notice maybe more of what's going on in the mind. And then you may start to notice things coming up, sensation-wise in your body or emotional. And you're sitting there in a class in a pose, and so you're not necessarily doing anything to quote-unquote fix it, but you're sitting through it, and you're experiencing it, and it will end, and it will pass. So it's a very calming, relaxing type of yoga that I think is the best complement for mental health, work or the work that I'm doing.
Okay. Yes, I can see why I don't like restorative yoga. I think it's those things coming up that I don't want to think through or get through. I think that's a very, that gave me a very big insight. I will be honest with you about that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm so excited about your passionate view of yoga and how it's helping your clients. And your clients are actually, saying that themselves, that that it's really helping them. And that's my basic philosophy of yoga, is that it's very beneficial for almost everybody. And I think it's great that we've been able to talk to you and get a view of how it helps both the mental issues that all of us will have at one point or another, but also in addition to any physical issues that most of us know that yoga can do. Katie, if anybody would like to talk to Katie or see what she's doing, she's at www.katieovercash, all one word, .com. And on Facebook, she's on at Overcash Therapy. Anything you'd like to conclude with, Katie?
No, thank you for having me on. And I love yoga, and I love restorative yoga, and it's all great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.